don't know if we're going to have a different, like a half day or something like that. I'm not sure how it's going to work. Just so for the video purposes, it's December 17th, 2020. This is social sciences.
I gotta type in anything, any codes to get to where you at.
Yes, you're going to need the summit codes, and I will send them to you during the course of this class, probably while we're watching a video. Jerry, we're going to watch a video. So while we're sending the video, I will send you a private chat with the summit codes for you.
Okay.
Kiara, welcome. Good morning. We are talking about checkpoint number 2. We're talking about checkpoint number 2. So we've spent a little bit of time talking about what endorsements are. We spent some time talking about what celebrities are, what endorsements are, and how celebrities use their influence, their fame, their money to help society or for a social cause. So for checkpoint number 2, you're going to create an endorsement. You have 2 options. You can create an endorsement using your favorite celebrity for a social cause. So if your favorite celebrity, let's say your favorite celebrity is J. Cole. Let's say that's your favorite celebrity. Or an actor like Michael B. Jordan, whoever happens to be your favorite celebrity. You are going to create an advertisement. You can make it by hand. If you're an artist, you can draw it. You can do it on the computer where you can put that person's picture and then some writing, or you can do it with writing on the paper. And you're going to create maybe a banner, a billboard, an advertisement. So like for me, if you see your favorite entertainer for this social cause. So it could be just to like pick somebody that was already used, like Shirley Ann did Madonna. You could do Madonna for women's female reproductive rights. Or you could do like Akon. If you guys know who Akon is, do you know Akon?
Yep.
Yep. You ever hear the song that I got locked up? That's who Akon is. Akon has put in millions of dollars into Africa, and he has given back. Now that's a real one. I want you to create a hypothetical one. So you're making a hypothetical endorsement. That's your checkpoint number 2. If you don't want to do that, you have an option to, we talked about philanthropy, which is the giving. And by the way, all your PowerPoints, every note that we've done for class is available on Summit under resources. I put those up for you. So you can explain why philanthropy can be negative. So if these celebrities who are giving money to causes is not equally distributed, which means it's not given equally to people who need it, yes, you can. You can do Shirley Ann, you can do both of them, or you can do the slides, or you can do hand drawn. It's up to you. I would prefer that it be done by break by the 22nd, which is 5 full days from now. Because that way, going into the break, I would prefer that you guys are all caught up with your work. So you can explain why philanthropy is negative. If we don't remember what philanthropy is the giving of money, resources, or time to support a community. So you can decide, there's an article down here that says, right here, this link, and it gives reasons why philanthropy historically does not help Black people, even when it's given by someone who is Black. A lot of times there are what we call these discrepancies, that the people who need the money truly don't get it. The people that need the help truly don't get it. To make that relevant, think about how many people receive, right? Think about how many people sell those food stamps on the street or sell their access card on the dollar. So think about if the resources are not going to people that truly need them, is there a point of giving to them? Or you can do the third point, which is when we started the year, we talked about Colin Kaepernick. And we're talking about the 1968 Olympic protest. That's what our class is about today. We're going to finish that up. I think we got to the video about Carlos and Smith last time, but we didn't talk about the third member. So you can say, how can celebrities lose endorsements and opportunities by supporting? Now, notice I put the quotes wrong in parentheses. The reason I did that is because it's only seen wrong to certain people. It's not everybody thinks that this is a wrong action. So like such as taking a knee during the national anthem or raising a fist during, a fist that supports Black unity or Black power during the Olympics. So this is your checkpoint number 2. It's been on Summit for about 2 days. Also on Summit, you have announcements from me right here. And I put for, social sciences. So I put that on 15th, what's today? So that was 2 days ago, I put that up there. Also, you'll see social sciences. All these links are for you to either have a video or an article related to what we're talking about in class. So from the 10th, there's 3 different, and then back here, if you don't, for checkpoint 1, say you don't remember what celebrity endorsements are all about, you can go back and you can literally click that and it will go right to the video for you. So you should be able to see those right on your screen for social sciences. Same thing with checkpoint 1. All right, so checkpoint 1 and checkpoint 2 are available up on Summit.
Mr. T.
Yes.
I just logged into Summit and I don't have none of them links. The last thing I got from you was from last week.
You don't have any of those links in announcements?
No.
Okay. Can you see them on my screen? Let me see.
Yeah, I saw them on your screen, but I looked on my screen on my Summit and I don't have them.
Okay. Okay. Maybe, let's see. You know what it is? I think because there are 2 sections of social sciences, so I may need to assign it to the second group too. That might have been on my end. Summit's a little funny like that. I'll put them up though. And if you go into resource, do you have the resources? Let me look.
What do you mean by resources?
I'll show you. So like if you go into the course, see my problem is I don't know how it looks for y'all. Let me see. So if I go in here on my end and I look for resources, oops, wrong one. So if I go to social science, it should show me what resources I added for you guys. So let me see something. Edit project, and activity and resources. So you guys do not see all these PowerPoints here that I'm pointing to?
I don't see them.
And then there should be a PowerPoint for checkpoint 2. I thought I assigned them to all the students. Charlene, can you just and maybe this will help Jair for a moment too. Would you mind sharing your screen and show me what you're seeing?
Yeah, okay.
Let me just make it so you can share a screen. Share screen with me real quick. And if anybody else has any questions, this should help. So go ahead, Charlene, share your screen with me and let me see what you can see. Okay. Checkpoint. So you don't have the hyperlinks. Go over to that sidebar. What are the options there? Go to resources. Why are these resources not showing up on your end? Go to the star at the top. You see that star at the top there? There's nothing. Announcements. I don't, Yeah, I wonder why they're not. I wonder why all those PowerPoints are not coming up. You know what I'll do? I'm just going to have to send it through the announcements from now on, the PowerPoints.
You want me to stop sharing?
Yeah, you can stop sharing. Because on my end, it looks like I'm dropping these off for you guys as resources. But now that I can see your screen, it doesn't look like it's getting through. So I'm going to talk to Miss Christina about maybe I just have to drop the PowerPoints right into Summit through an announcement, which is what I may do from now on. Thank you for sharing your screen. Okay, so we're going to go back to do a little bit review. Then we're going to go back to the 1968 Olympics. Let's see. So can everybody see the screen now? Just give me a thumbs up if you can see the PowerPoint. All right.
Yeah.
Okay. So our essential question, which is our overreaching question for this section, is first we started out with, do celebrities have a responsibility? If you would go back one, that's checkpoint number 2. So this is a whole new lesson. This is the checkpoint that's up on Summit. And you can use this checkpoint to answer those questions. I mean, use this information to answer those checkpoints. So I will just have to put that out. I would just have to put that PowerPoint up for you guys to have access to. So our essential question is, what do athletes and celebrities risk when they speak out or protest? So what you have learned so far this year in this class, what type of risk do celebrities take when they speak out or protest? Okay, they can have judgment. Do they stand to lose anything financially?
I say it depends on the situation.
Contracts.
Okay, so it could be situational. They can lose, Johnny, did you say contracts?
Yeah.
Yeah. They can lose what we call endorsements. Endorsements. So they have these supporters like sometimes like Nike or Apple or these big companies, they pay celebrities to endorse products for them. And what they risk is they can risk judgment, they can risk losing money, they can lose contracts, and they can also lose what we call credibility. And when they lose their credibility, they lose the ability to be able to speak out anymore. I know we should all know who Kevin Hart is, right?
Yeah.
I want to say about a year ago, Kevin Hart, he got in trouble a little bit for saying some homophobic remarks. Did you guys see that? Where he went on the Ellen show and he had to do some apologizing?
No.
Oh, okay. Well, it basically came out that Kevin Hart had said some negative things about people's sexual orientation. And in order for damage control, he went on Ellen and he also had I would believe an extramarital affair with his wife going on, that he cheated on his wife, and that was out there. So he had to rebuild his image. I just saw, have you seen the commercial with him yelling about the credit card? And they said, "Why are you so loud?" He's like, "That's just how I talk."
It's an actual commercial? Because I don't watch TV like that. Well, I don't watch TV.
That's okay. It's just a commercial. The point being is that we see now that Kevin Hart, a year removed, is okay. He's still making money with endorsements. But because he had said something about someone else's, what was perceived to be negative, he had the risk of losing these endorsements. So celebrities, when they speak out, whether they're a celebrity or an athlete, Laura Ingraham, who I don't expect you guys to know, is a commentator on Fox News. When LeBron James came out and spoke about George Floyd's death, or he spoke about, young black men being killed by police, she basically told him to shut up and dribble. That's what she told him. Shut up and dribble. That's a real quote. You can look it up. And what she was saying to him was, it's not your job to be concerned about social injustice. It's your job to play basketball. So shut up and do your job. And what we have been discussing in this class is, if you come from poverty, I come from poverty. I do not come from wealth. I was raised on welfare cheese and rats and roaches and the whole nine. I do not come from poverty, okay? I do not come from privilege. I come from poverty. And if I was ever to make a lot of money or be in an influential position, I know me personally, I would give back to people that are in that same situation. But athletes and celebrities, when we're talking about millions of dollars on the line, sometimes they switch their priorities, let's put it that way. So I think the last class, did we watch the video on the civil rights movement in the 1960s? I can't remember. Charlie-Ann, do you remember? Or Kiera, do you remember if we watched the video last time about the civil rights movements in the 1960s and what was taking place?
I remember the video, don't remember what the video was about.
Okay. All right. So there was two. I think I'll start with the second one, just to give you guys some background information. So in the 1960s in America, we still had a large racial divide. We still had Jim Crow laws in effect. We still had segregated housing, education, theaters, all types of things. And so in the 1960s, Black people in America were fed up. And some of the great leaders that we know about, Dr. Martin Luther King, Rosa Parks, Malcolm X, Thurgood Marshall, the names just go on and on and on and on. They decided that the inhumane and unfair treatment of African Americans had reached a point where they didn't want to take it anymore. Malcolm X, who was an outspoken minister of Islam, said in one of his speeches that by any means necessary, we will fight back now in this country. We will fight for civil rights. Unfortunately, Malcolm X was assassinated in 1965. In 1968, Martin Luther King Jr., Dr. Reverend Martin Luther King Jr. was assassinated also. Also, Robert Kennedy, who was the brother of John F. Kennedy, was also assassinated in 1968. So there was 3 people that were killed for standing up for civil rights in the 1960s. So on the cusp of the 1968 Summer Olympic Games, a lot of Black athletes were actually going to boycott the games. They were not going to go to the games at all. So as a review, we're just going to take a look at the video of why these athletes were going to boycott. So the word boycott, it's in there, it's in bold right there, means to not take part in something. If we were going to boycott a product, we would stop buying it. We would stop using it. If we were going to boycott like something on TV, we would stop watching it. So the boycott just means to remove our participation. And these Black athletes felt, especially during the civil rights movement, that they had some moral and cultural responsibility to stand up to the injustices of Jim Crow, of police brutality, and a lot of those things are still going on today. But in particular in 1968, with the assassination of 2 icons of the civil rights movement and the changes in American society, they decided that they were going to boycott the Olympic Games. So let me play this quick video to give you context. And that way, if you weren't here, you would have a little bit of idea of what was going on before the 1968 games. Then we'll talk about the protest that took place there. Hold on one second. Sorry, I'm trying to get this to share. Okay, here we go.
The 1968 U.S. Olympic track and field team is considered one of the greatest ever assembled to represent the U.S. in the Olympics. They won 28 medals and set 8 world records at the Games in Mexico City. The team included some of the fastest runners in the world at the time, like sprinters Tommie Smith and John Carlos, who made history when they accepted their medals and then raised their fists during the playing of the U.S. national anthem in a protest full of symbolism. And they almost didn't even show up that year.
Black men and women athletes have unanimously voted to fully endorse and participate in a boycott of the World Olympic Games in 1968.
Members of the team threatened to stay home in protest of racist treatment of black athletes in America.
They will not participate in the 1968 Olympics in Mexico City unless something is done about these terrible evils and injustices.
So that in case our black boys don't want to go,
What would they have to do for you to go to Mexico?
boycott is still on it.
The story of this silent protest and the boycott that almost was starts with the buttons all 3 medal winners wore that day, the Olympic Project for Human Rights. The Olympic Project for Human Rights, or OPHR, was founded in 1967 by sociologist, educator, and former star athlete Dr. Harry Edwards. It was a coalition of prominent Olympic athletes that threatened to derail American Olympic glory by opting out of the Games, to protest the racism in sports that, for decades, had gone unaddressed. In the mid-20th century, sports seemed to be a leading example of improved racial equality in the United States. Black athletes like football player Kenny Washington and baseball player Jackie Robinson broke racial barriers by joining professional leagues in 1946 and 1947, which, until that point, had been whites only. College and professional sports teams gradually integrated from there, years ahead of racial segregation legally ending in the United States.
So the media began to promote the black athlete as a symbol that racial democracy existed in the United States. If Jackie Robinson can make it, then why can't other blacks make it? And so it was kind of a factor that was used to dismiss the question of institutionalized racism.
But in the 1960s, the myth of racial progress in America began to dissolve. The Civil Rights Act ended legal segregation in 1964, but Black Americans continued to face institutionalized racism and police brutality.
Integration simply wasn't successful in terms of improving black people's lives, and you needed to force further change.
Years of frustration ultimately erupted in widespread violent riots.
I think the further we get away from that, we underestimate the influence of the riots. The riots happened in a lot of urban cities across America. Black people still live in terrible socioeconomic conditions in the cities, and that was just as much a problem as Jim Crow laws. So how do you attract attention to that?
A growing Black Power movement and Black student movement in the 1960s emboldened Black athletes to speak up about the racial injustices they endured off the field.
There's no difference between a black and a white athlete. We're all out there sweating, we run on 2 legs. There's a difference in the way society treats us after we leave the track.
But with the 1968 Olympics coming up, Black athletes saw an opportunity to push for change.
The idea of a Black Olympic boycott had been around since 1959, and it went through various fits and stops until you get to the Black Power Conference in 1967. And the Black Power Conference basically argued that you should use any means possible to force the government to pay attention to institutionalized racism.
For Harry Edwards, that meant organizing the Olympic Project for Human Rights.
And I think one of those means that are necessary right now is the Olympic boycott movement and the whole revolt of the black athlete in this country.
He realized that he could use Black sports participation as a way to attract attention to the problem.
The OPHR had 5 key demands, among them being to disinvite South Africa and Rhodesia, 2 countries practicing apartheid, from competing in the Games, the removal of openly racist International Olympic Committee President Avery Brundage, and hiring black coaches to U.S. teams. The potential boycott became a hot topic in the news and of debate among athletes.
All the black athletes want to run, but we don't want to close the door on millions of black people here in the United States.
I don't see a boycott really helping the Negro cause.
In the months leading up to the Games in Mexico City, the OPHR kept members of the press guessing whether they would attend or not.
We will let you know about the future of your Olympic team when we deem it proper and when we feel that you can handle that kind of information. Right now, we just don't think that you're ready.
Tom, when will come a determination whether you, Lee Evans, and others will or will not boycott the Olympics?
I wish I could tell you.
Ultimately, it came down to a vote.
The decision was made that if there wasn't really a kind of unified or the majority of that black athletes would participate, the boycott would be called off because those who did boycott, like Tommie Smith, would have been boycotting in vain. Another black person simply would have taken their place.
Even though most of the OPHR's demands remained unmet, the athletes headed to Mexico City with plans to make their own demonstration if the opportunity arose, which it did on October 16th, following the men's 200-meter final. OPHR members Tommie Smith and John Carlos won gold and bronze, respectively, and Smith set a new world record. After the race, they solemnly approached the medal stand, shoeless, wearing black socks, accepted their medals, and just as the U.S. national anthem began to play, did this.
Happiness is in the air. Holidays coming, holidays coming. Show someone that you care. Holidays coming, holidays coming. Show someone that you care.
For the full duration of the Star-Spangled Banner, Smith and Carlos bowed their heads and each raised a black-gloved fist in the air to protest the racial injustice in their home country and show solidarity with those fighting for equality. The fists are not the only symbolic gesture in this image, as Tommie Smith explained later.
The right glove signified the power within black America. The left glove signified black unity. The scarf that was worn around my neck signified blackness. John Carlos and me wore black socks without shoes to also signify our poverty.
Additionally, John Carlos wore his jacket unzipped, a violation of Olympic etiquette to show solidarity with working-class Americans. He also wore beads to honor victims of lynching. And finally, all 3 medal winners, including silver medalist Peter Norman of Australia, wore
Buttons reading Olympic Project for Human Rights. There were some boos in the stadium last night.
This moment was the ultimate manifestation of the work of Harry Edwards and the OPHR to intersect outspoken political activism with sport. And it ended Smith and Carlos's Olympics.
From the International Olympic Committee,
Mr. Townsend.
their credentials were taken away and they were told.
Yes.
Like sprinters.
This is Amira. I am at work right now, so can I just catch up on work later?
Yes, Amira, I will send you an email, okay?
Okay. Yeah, thank you.
No problem. I think I lost my spot here.
Carlos's Olympics.
When the International Olympic Committee suspended them Friday, their credentials were taken away and they were told they could not stay in Mexico.
They were dropped from the U.S. Olympic team and given 48 hours to leave Mexico. Sports journalist Howard Cosell criticized the U.S. Olympic Committee's decision in this fiery broadcast from Mexico City.
They say the games are sports, not politics, something separate and apart from the realities of life. But the black athlete says he is a human being before he is an athlete, that he wants equality everywhere, not just within the arena.
Tommie Smith and John Carlos were saying black athletes don't have it made in American society. We may be famous, but we face the same discrimination that other black people do. And we don't appreciate being used as a way to counter the black struggle coming out of black communities. black athletes are black. People have multiple identities. I think Colin Kaepernick is representing a voice in the black community, which is the same thing I think that Carlos and Smith was saying, that the black struggle is more than just about integration and assimilation. It's also about empowering this particular community. And people like Tommy Smith, Harry Edwards, John Carlos came from poor black communities.
Which is why this protest on the Olympic medal stand wasn't just about sports, as Tommy Smith explained to Howard Cosell the next day.
Do you think you represented all black athletes in doing this?
I can say I represented Black America. I'm very proud to be a black man and also to have won the gold medal. And this, I thought, I could represent my people by letting them know that I'm proud to be a black man.
Okay, so let's have a little discussion about what were some of the reasons that the black athletes going into the 1968 World Games wanted to protest the games. We saw Dr. Harry Edwards there. What were some of the reasonings why they wanted to protest? Don't be afraid, we won't attack you. You want to say something, Jair? Go ahead.
They want to respect. They want to respect more than just arena. They want to respect everywhere, I guess.
Good, absolutely. He said that there's no difference between the black and white athlete. The only difference is how they are treated when they are not on the field, right?
Yeah.
Okay. We see this today. Thank you for your input. We see this today with NFL players. A few years ago, I know you guys are young, but you're not that young. A few years ago, NFL players started taking knees during the national anthem, and it caused a big uproar. And that was 2016. This was in 1968, which was a much more polarized time. So they wanted to boycott because they didn't believe that black people in America were being treated fairly. So instead of boycotting flat out the games, they decided to boycott at the games. So this would be the image that we saw there, okay? And the gentleman in the middle is Tommy Smith, and the one to his right is John Carlos. They put their gloves up in the air, and there was some symbolism involved in what they put in, how they protested. So as the athletes waited to go to the podium, Carlos and Smith, they told this guy Norman down here that they planned to use their win as an opportunity to protest. They couldn't protest the games, so they decided to appear on the podium bearing symbols of protest and strength. They wore no shoes with black socks to bring attention to black poverty. John Carlos wore beads to protest lynching and raised back fists to represent their solidarity and support with black people and oppressed people around the world. So Smith and Carlos expressed their First Amendment right to protest. According to the video, what happened to these gentlemen after they protested in the games? What were they asked to do? Nakaya, Kiera, Shirley Ann, Emmanuel, does anybody remember what happened after they protested? What were they asked to do?
They was asked to leave.
Thank you, Kiera. They were asked not only removed from the Olympics, but they were asked to leave the country in 48 hours. So they were literally kicked out the country for protesting for black rights. which seems kind of severe. Seems kind of severe. We just asked this question. What happened? Kiera said they were asked to leave the country. Do any of you believe that being an Olympian is hard? I mean, you got to get up every morning at 4 o'clock. You've got to run. To be a world-class athlete is not an easy task. It takes a lot of work. Was it worth them to raise their hands in solidarity and to protest? Was it worth ending their Olympic careers? In your opinion, that's all I'm asking for. In your opinion, was it worth ending their Olympic careers?
Yeah, no. Yeah, no, I guess.
If it was you, if you had spent all those years of your life to become a world-class athlete, would you risk your career to protest for other people?
Me personally, no. But you, I get where they were coming from and going with it.
Okay. You understand the purpose, though, right?
Yeah.
There's a saying, I'm trying to remember it right now. Pretty much an injustice that happens unseen is an injustice to all of us. If I was put in a position to protest, I'm gonna protest. That's just me personally. Is it worth giving up my Olympic career? I don't know. That's a personal decision. So these men were very brave to stand in protest of their own country, of their treatment and of people that look like them in their own country. Now, there's an article there that you can always read if you want to know more, but there's a third part to this story. Can you see the gentleman down here giving like the finger like this right here, kind of pointing at the camera? His name was Peter Norman. And Peter Norman was an Australian sprinter. And he agreed with the black athletes. He even wore a pin. He didn't put any gloves up. He just stood there and he allowed these two black athletes to protest. Norman was punished more severely than these two gentlemen were. He never went back to the Olympics, ever. They banned him for life. And in 1972, he was their fastest sprinter. And instead of sending him to the Olympics, they didn't send one at all. So Peter Norman, John Carlos and Tommy Smith were eventually reacclimated because they were great athletes. And both of them went on to play professional football. But Peter Norman was never reaccepted into society. Right after this, he retired from the sport and began to suffer from depression, alcoholism, and a painkiller addiction. During that time, he used his silver medal as a doorstop. He died without being acknowledged for his contributions to the sport. Though he kept the silver medal, he was regularly excluded from events related to the sports. Even when the Olympics came to Sydney, which is in Australia, he was not recognized. When he died in 2006, these two gentlemen who were on the podium with him actually helped carry his coffin. So Peter Norman paid more of a price than Carlos and Smith did for speaking out. I don't know how long this is. This is an interview with Peter Norman's son. And believe it or not, when he went back to Australia, people addressed him for most of his life by the N-word. simply because he stood with black athletes. Let me see if I can see how long this is. Let's see if it'll be time, if we can have enough time for it. Now, this interview is with his son, explaining what happened to
Now,
Peter
the
Norman.
amazing Australian hero who you might never have heard of here, who is being honoured around the world. In 1968, Peter Norman was competing for Australia at the Olympics in Mexico City. He took silver for the US, for us I should say, in the 200 metres, but it's what happened after the race that really put him on the world stage. As the gold and bronze winners from the US staged a so-called Black Power salute on the podium, Peter said he would stand by them wearing a human rights badge. Now, the move cost him his career and his reputation, but it won him 2 friends for the rest of his life. And half a century on, Peter's story is being told in a new book by his nephew, Matt Norman, who is with us now. Welcome to the show, Matt.
Thank you so much for having me.
Funnily enough, we're still sort of seeing these protests happening, athletes taking the knee in the United States, which is absolutely infuriating people like Donald Trump. So your uncle standing on the podium in 1968 was a super controversial move and way ahead of his time.
Look, absolutely. And one of the things that people need to understand, it was a silent protest. There was no violence used. And I think what Colin Kaepernick's done as well has made the same sort of statement where it's nice and silent, no violence being used. And I think that's the most important part when a protest is being made against certain people. And in this case, it was because of the way black Americans were being treated at home. You know, they're going to war and shedding their blood and then they were winning medals at Olympics, but still they weren't being treated.
It was right after Martin Luther King had been assassinated
in the same year,
as well.
Martin
People
Luther
were
King
angry.
and Robert Kennedy as well for standing up for black rights at the same time.
How did your uncle find himself to be in this situation? What made him, because he started actually hearing rumblings and rumours that if these two won, that they were going to make a stand. How did he get on board?
It was well known that there was going to be a boycott from black nations, and they decided against that at the last minute and said that if you wanted to protest in your own way that you could, and one of those ways was to wear an Olympic Project for Human Rights badge. They didn't really find out until they got into the winner's room just before going out onto the dais. And at that stage, Peter asked them if he could support them and support their cause by wearing an OPHR badge, which he did. And they said, look, no way, this is an American problem. And he said, well, we've got our own problems in Australia. We just went through the White Australia policy. So there was a lot of issues. And he was brought up with the Salvation Army. So he had a lot of insight into issues relating to race back here in the country as well.
Interesting, looking at that iconic photograph, and I'm embarrassed to say, I didn't realise this was an Aussie who won silver.
Yeah.
He's wearing the badge. Symbolism of the black glove.
Yeah, so the symbols of the black glove, strangely enough, Peter was the one that actually told them to wear it on each hand because John
that was
Carlos...
his idea.
Yeah, so John Carlos left his gloves back at the Olympic Village, and so Peter said, you're only holding up one hand, so share the gloves. The symbolism was black poverty. That's what they claimed. And, you know, for that, once Peter actually put his badge on, it sort of became history, and it's been known for 50 years now. So,
how did it affect his life? Was he blacklisted as a result of doing this?
Yeah. So when he came home, things didn't look too bad for him with the media, and a lot of people started calling him the N-word and things like that, which was a real shame. But what really happened was within the 4 years later, you know, he was currently number 5 in the world. He just won a silver medal at the previous Olympics. And he also qualified for the Munich Olympics 15 times during the 100 and 200 metres, and yet he wasn't selected to go to Munich.
So they ostracised him, they just literally blacklisted him for
Pretty
the rest
much.
of his life.
Yeah.
How did he cope with that?
With a great sense of humour. He said, you know, if they don't want me to go to the Olympics, I won't go. But on the times he was doing, he would have won gold, so it would have been a real honour to actually get that next stage.
His record still stands.
this is the crazy thing. It's 50 years this week, and he still holds the Commonwealth and Australian record.
Wow.
Which is insane.
In these last...
Okay, I'm just going to stop that for time's sake. So you can see that Peter Norman actually suffered a greater cost than the athletes that actually staged the protest. So this is our final point, and we're going to be done. So can you guys see these questions here? Give me a thumbs up if you can see it. Okay, thank you, Kiara. So I think I might use this. I think I might use these questions more as a formal assessment, since we spent 2 lessons on Carlos and Smith and Peter Norman. I think I might use this as a actual assessment to assign to you. Maybe use this as a checkpoint. Just a real quick review. We talked about what happened to Carlos and Smith. I just wanted to get your feedback on Peter Norman. Peter Norman was an Australian. He wasn't from America. He had nothing to do with anything going on. And he was a white man. He didn't have to involve himself with any of this. Do you think that he was taking a greater risk involving himself in the protest? So by standing on that podium with Tommie Smith and John Carlos, and to make a stand for Black Americans, was he taking a greater risk by being a white man?
You wouldn't think so, but he did.
Yeah. I mean, so, but as you saw and thank you, as you saw in the video, and like I told you beforehand, people called him the N-word when he went back to Australia. In 1972, he was completely ostracized from Olympic competition. And he fell into alcoholism and painkiller addiction. So he stood up for, and this is what the theme I want you to remember is that risk that these athletes take when they stand up. And in Peter Norman's case, he had nothing to do with the cause. But he still decided that it was more important for human rights to protest against it than anything. So I will put up these. Jahir, do they have a school email for you yet? Did you get a school email, a Yes Philly account? If not, I have an email for your mother. I can just defer everything to there. So we will continue, we might have class next Tuesday. If we do a class next Tuesday, in all honesty, it's probably going to be to do checkpoint work in class. Because I'm not going to assign you work before we go on a break, okay? Unless you want some more work. Speak now or forever hold your peace. Oh, now my chat box is popping. Okay. All right. So thank you for listening. I hope that you've learned something today about the risk that athletes take, that people in positions of power take when they stand up for other people's rights, whether it be political, whether it be professional, whether it be religious. Standing up when you are in a position of power is always a risk. And then I'll put these questions up after the break for Summit, okay? So I want you folks to have a great day. If I don't If we don't have class next Tuesday, I will see you after the break. I think we do, but I'm not sure. I have to ask Dr. Dave what we're doing for next Tuesday. Okay? So everybody be safe out there. Try to stay warm. Shirley Ann, no more falling on the ice, okay?
I won't, but I won't make no promises. I'm clumsy.
That's okay, because I'm going to Target tomorrow and I'm going to get me some red velvet cookies and I'm going to eat them on camera right in front of you since you didn't share none with me.
I'm not coming to class then. Okay.
Okay. Emmanuel, thank you. Jahir, welcome. Thank you for coming to class. Kiara, thank you for your input. And Shirley Ann, thank you for your input all the time. I appreciate you guys. Okay? So have a good afternoon, everybody. All right.